Okay, so it's really late. So I don't know how coherent I'm gonna be on this. But one of the YouTube channel that I subscribe to, the Honeybadger Radio, they're the men's rights advocate. Um, they're run by mainly these three women, Allison Tiemann, Karen Strong, and Hannah Warren. Now recently, I went into kind of a debate with Alison Tiemann in which that didn't end so well. And I was kind of thinking to myself, because we had a pretty heated argument, I was thinking to myself, I'm almost kind of hoping that she's not gonna make a video of any kind about me, because then I will have to make a video response back. And this is just something that I'm really passionate about. Like, she has something that she's really passionate about, and that's fine. But I'm really passionate about methodology in science, like approaching things the correct way, basically. So that's why I had a problem with a statement that she said in one of her videos. Now, I'm just gonna throw it out there. Even though I question that everything that Alison Tiemann does for the men's rights are actually for the right reasons, because I've said this before in one of my videos. I do have a pet peeve about people doing something, even if that something is like a good movement or a good organization, good activity, whatever. If you're doing it not for the right reasons, it could lead to something very bad. And I've said this before. That's why I get very concerned when something like this happens. But still, that being said, I still don't really have a problem with vast majority of what she says on the show. That's why I listen to it. Like, if I had a problem with most of what she says or significant portion of what she says, I wouldn't have watched it. But most of what she says, I take her at her word, and I give her credit, and I try to give her the benefit of the doubt. But a minority portion of what she says in the show, I have to criticize it. This is just what I have to do, because I want her to become better at what she says. I want the show to become better, because I think it will help at their cause. So this is the reason why I do what I do. Now, the debate is regarding a statement that she said in one of the reasoning, that she said men are more empathic than women. Now, again, I wouldn't necessarily have a problem with this if she says that this is just what I perceive. From my own experience, men are more compassionate or empathic or whatever, because in one of the Ranzerker, she did say that in my experience, women are way more violent, or girls are way more violent. I think she said girls, not women. Girls are way more violent, and then she also says something to the effect of, when it comes to bullying, boys bullying girls are not as prevalent, but girls were just like running packs and molest the boy. Like, she made some remarks about this, and I let it go. I just go like, okay, well, she's saying that in the context of her own experience, and I don't have to agree with that. I'm just gonna be like, well, that's an exaggeration, but whatever. This is how you feel about from your own experience. It's fine. But in this case, she says that there was a study that showed that men are more empathic, because when you look at the automated reflexes between men and women, men are more empathic, or something like that. Now, when it comes to claims like this, basically my mind just kind of go like, that doesn't sound right. That's nothing I've heard of, but what I'm thinking to myself is, maybe that's true. I mean, I have to find out about it, because this is new to me. I'm a psychologist, and I do know a little bit about the gender differences, because I did study a little bit. So this is something new, and so I wrote a comment and I said, can you please send me the paper? Show me where you found it. Now, this is the thing about Allison that kind of annoys me a little bit, which is that she seems to get kind of annoyed when you ask her for sources, because I've said several times in the comment section that one thing you can improve your show is having a website. I know that it's really hard, I know, but this is something that's really worth doing. Have a website, have a page to have all your sources. If you talk about something, just say like, refer to study X. I mean, Stefan Molyneux does this, Sargon does this, Crowd and Tita. I mean, pretty much every single major YouTuber, when they start talking about studies, they cite those sources. And this is very important because what they're talking about is something very unpopular, very controversial. It's things that nobody has ever heard of, right? And so it's really good if they can have those papers for people to access, because when I run into discussions with people and I said, oh, from the Honeybadger radios, I learned that it's actually this. I mean, have you heard about this? And then people always ask me like, so where did you get this from? And then I say, well, the Honeybadger radios. And they're saying like, well, I mean, what is the study? Where's the research? I want to see. I mean, where is it? So then, I have to go look. And when you're the ones who are making these assertions, you should have the sources. That's how science works. But, whatever. I mean, I get it. Maybe you don't have the funding. Maybe you don't have the time to do all of that. I still just said that it's worth doing. Okay, but she gets very annoyed about this. So I asked her for this paper, and she just kind of go like, go look for it yourself. Look at the reflexes versus self-reported. Okay, so I went and I Googled it, and I looked at several studies, and I just told her no, I didn't find anything. I mean, again, to her credit, she didn't delete any of the comments, so you can actually go and read them yourself and just judge for yourself, like who was the more reasonable one. I'm serious. So then I told her no, I didn't, and then she sent me the paper. So I said, okay, this is going to be very interesting. So I went and I read through the paper thoroughly, and the paper did not say what she said. The paper was one of the studies that, of which similar ones, I don't have them all on top of my head, but it's a similar one that showed that there was no difference when you look at the brain responses, which is not surprising. I mean, when you look at the brain responses, and especially when you look at averages between men and women, a lot of things just sort of flushed out. I mean, they become pretty even. The more interesting thing is not really the averages, but it's when you look at distributions, and men and women tend to have different distributions of certain behaviors, certain cognitive processes, and this is the interesting part. But generally, if you kind of take the average of like a big abstract construct like compassion or like love or like intelligence, creativity, they tend to average out. So I basically told her, and I said, sign. I mean, well, I guess there were several indications of emotion in that comment section, but I was really annoyed, okay, because she made me go look for the studies, and then she signed me a paper that did not say what she said, okay? So I basically said, and this was actually something that I found several times, that she makes these assertions, specific assertions about studies and about her own interpretation that she's putting out there. That's just not accurate, and it's just misleading people, and she doesn't have the sources in that people cannot check. This is just a pet peeve of mine. She has her pet peeves, which I'll go into later, but this is a real serious pet peeve of mine. And I told her that as a scientist, this is very serious to me. And I think she thought that I was being condescending to her when I said that I was a scientist, but no, I mean, I wasn't trying to say, therefore I have authority over you. No, I was trying to tell her this is where I'm coming from. Just like, let's say if you're a musician and somebody is, let's say you're a violinist and somebody is playing the violin wrong, holding the bow wrong, and you say that as a violinist, this is something that really bothers me because you're doing it wrong. So then, I told her what the main finding was, and then I also, told her that there was no difference in the brain imaging, but when it comes to the scores that they score people on in an empathic scale, which is, I mean, technically it's a self-report, but it's more like a self-reported assessment, which is kind of different from, let's say, questionnaire, tell me how you feel, that kind of thing. They have self-report, it's kind of like an exam, like a math exam. That's self-report, but it assesses your math skill. So they had this score, and then it showed that girls are better than boy, and then there's a huge age effect that as girls get older, their score actually goes up, whereas boys' score went down. And the authors themselves discussed this about this inconsistency. What they said was that we observed that even though the female participants had similar hemodynamic and pupillary responses to males when viewing individuals in painful situations, they reported being significantly more upset by them. The lack of congruence between the neural and physiological measures on the one hand and the dispositional measures and self-reported post-scan ratings on the other suggests that male and females may appraise their initial similar response to painful situations differently, thus reflecting potential real differences in phonological experiences. So they gave like a very reasonable explanations for why this is. So there's like the brain response, but your appraisal is something else, like how you actually perceive the situation. This is something very important. This is a very important distinction in the psychological studies when it comes to neurological correlates, because Allison seems to be pretty convinced that, well, the neuroimaging shows that there's no difference, so therefore it shows that self-report is just bunk, basically. But not necessarily, because how we actually experience versus the neural correlates, that process, it's very little understood, and it doesn't mean that the self-report is not reliable. It could be a number of other things, just that the neural correlates are not able to actually tell you the actual experience. Anyways, this is just what I'm throwing out there, and this is basically what the author is trying to say too. And then of course she got the first thing wrong, which is a study. The second thing, she told me that, oh no, the girl's score also went down, and I just kind of went like, no, look at figure 1. You're wrong again. So it's the second time that she's wrong. Now at this point, if somebody did that to me, I would have been like, okay, maybe I should be more careful the next time I make assertions, right? But no, this is not what she does. So we go on, and then she started to basically switch the goalposts, and then she started to make some other, unfounded assertions, such as she thinks that women will help other people because of social status, and men because they risk their lives. That's not because of social status, that's just pure compassion or something. I mean, even though, of course, men also risk their life to help other people because of social status too. I mean, you gain a lot by being a hero in terms of social status. I'm not saying that when you help somebody, it necessarily is because of social status. You might really just you want to help somebody else. And this is also complicated because unconsciously we might want a social status, but consciously we don't. And the source of that probably came from social status, but the actual experience may be different. I mean, this is just, it's really, really, really complicated, and it would take me to write almost an essay to try to lay it out, all of it, how complex it is. And the problem I had with her assertion is she's just overly generalizing these things and not really listening to what I'm trying to tell her. Now, when it gets to really bad was that I then try to point out, I said that, this is something that I've seen in a lot of your videos. You seem to have a bias against women, and this is really what I try to point out, really to help her to try to self-reflect a little bit next time she makes assertions, to think twice before making these assertions. You can take it or leave it. But then she started to get really pissed off, and she started to say that I'm psychoanalyze her. This is also another thing about her. Alison Tiemann doesn't seem to know much of anything about science. I mean, she rants in her videos about, this is not how science works and blah, blah, as if she knows, how scientific study is conducted. But when you really interact with her, you then realize that she knows next to nothing about basically the field of science, how we actually do things. And she seems to be really bothered by the word choice I use in this discussion, and I use it to really out of respect for her, because I want to give her the benefit of the doubt. So I use a word like you seem to suggest. If she didn't say that directly, you seem to say. If she didn't say it directly, I'm not convinced. Instead of you just suck. I say I'm not convinced. And these are the words that scientists use in actual scientific papers that I don't know how much of it she actually read, because as I've shown, she's already run like twice. So I'm using this to try to be fair, but she thinks I'm psychoanalyzing her. And so the funny thing is, she doesn't seem to know what psychoanalysis is. And she might have reached this conclusion when I told her that I'm a psychologist. And again, I'm saying this to tell her that I do know a little bit about the gender differences. I did study a little bit, so I was just trying to tell her this is where I'm coming from. And she says that I'm psychoanalyzing her. Allison, psychoanalysis is assuming that you have some kind of mental illness or you have some sort of problem because of your childhood or some shit like that. Like you have a problem. But having a bias is something that normal people have. It's like me saying that, well, you know, you're contradicting yourself. I mean, how many people do that? Like almost everybody have contradicted themselves at one point in their life. And if you're serious about being a skeptic, if you're serious about trying to better yourself in knowledge, then you should appreciate people pointing that out to you. I got better, at least I think I got a lot better in terms of thinking, in terms of reasoning, in terms of logic, because of my ex, who pointed out, you know, systematically pointed out all the time to tell me that, you know, you have a problem X with your thinking, or you're contradicting yourself in X, or you're being hypocritical, or you know, you're biased or something like that. I mean, this is how you become better. But when I tried to tell her that, she just got pissed off. You know, I didn't say that, well, you know, you seem to have like a penis envy, you know, or you know, maybe something, you know, happened in your life that, you know, like that make you an angry person. I didn't say that. I just said you have a bias, which means, Allison, maybe check your bias at your door. You know, try to do that next time before you make these assertions. But it's not just that. When as we went on with our debate, I also pointed out another one where she doesn't even like check these articles thoroughly. She just threw this article at me to try to tell me, when I told her that, well, yes, individuals who do extreme things of self-sacrifice tend to be men, but individuals who do extreme sacrifice to harm other people also tend to be men. You know, like, this is the distribution I'm talking about, which I tend to be convinced of, because men tend to be more competitive evolutionarily, so that's why they tend to fall more on the extremes than women, which the curve is kind of like this. So then she just like slapped an article telling me that, oh, well, the you know, suicide bombers are predominantly in an area. I mean, she doesn't even look at the fact that this figure shows number, not percentages. I mean, she doesn't even read it. I mean, what big of an evidence can you get to show that you have a bias? I mean, if somebody does that to me, like, I just like, oh, here's an article, you know, like, that shows that you know, women can be like worse than men or something like that, and somebody said, you read this figure completely wrong, you seem to have a bias, check your bias at the door. You know, I would be like, oh, maybe that's true, maybe I have a bias, maybe I have to rethink it. But no, she doesn't do that. She just went on and accused me of being condescending. She went on accusing me of psychoanalyzing her. And then she also made this blank statement about, you know, borderline personality disorder and psychopathology are like just kind of the same thing. And I showed her Wikipedia article, showed that they're not the same thing. And she doesn't even seem to know that they're diagnosed differently. And then she slapped another article on me to try to tell me that, well, in the case of borderline personality disorder, patients, their empathy area seems to be also affected when you use the brain scanner, which is interesting. I mean, I didn't know this, so I was like, okay, well, I mean, not that I'm super surprised about it, but you know, it just kind of make me think. It's just like, that's interesting. So I didn't have a problem with that, but I basically told her that, well, but the problem is, this is something very extreme, okay? So even if on the average, you know, there's some sort of bias, that doesn't mean that in extreme cases people misdiagnose. I mean, this is a claim that you have to demonstrate, you know, like Hitchens said, you know, I mean, extraordinary claim require extraordinary evidence. When she said that, you know, in her opinion, borderline personality disorder is just a disorder that, you know, psychologists use on women because they don't want to call them psychopath. Even though, like, even when I went through school, I mean, people were pretty thrilled at the idea of a female psychopath. I mean, this is something that they always correct people, the psychologists. Well, whatever. I mean, when I was in school, it was during the Bush era, when in the US people were more sane. But they always try to say that, wait a minute, there are female psychopaths. And it may be true that it just affects men and women differently when it comes to diminishing empathy. This is also another possibility. This is going down another really complicated topic. But anyways, yeah. So these are the things that I try to point out to her, and I just kind of say, well, this kind of sounds like a statement out of your own bias, and I put a smiley face. Maybe I shouldn't have done that, but it was trying to say I'm still friendly. But I think she misinterpreted, meaning like I'm trying to be condescending, but I just didn't want to leave it like that. It's like, this sounds like a bias. I'm trying to say, this sounds like a bias. And I'm just like, it's okay, but it sounds like a bias, So she got pissed off, and then so now she made a video with Karen and Hannah. Thankfully, it's not just herself, where she was saying that she went to debate with a commentator, which is me, and I was trying to psychoanalyze her, and this is her pet peeve. Yeah, it's apparently you and the other the other two Honeybadgers going on and on, bashing feminists, and even with things like a face, like a smile, you try to say that they're trying to be smug or have a superiority complex. That's not psychoanalysis for some reason, okay? And but me, trying to say that you have a freaking bias, it's somehow psychoanalysis. It's telling you that you're a hypocrite, also a psychoanalysis. I guess so, but whatever, I'm gonna do it anyways. I'm not a licensed, clinical psychologist. My field experimental and cognitive, so I'm not actually a clinical psychologist. But I'm just gonna tell you that you are being hypocritical by accusing somebody else of psychoanalyze you, of being condescending, when you yourself do it tenfold. Okay, and this person, me, trying to tell you that you have a bias, it's apparently not received by you as constructive criticism, which, it would have been received by me as constructive criticism, but as like just a really demeaning accusation of somebody who's really trying to help you, okay? But whatever. At the end, they try to say something like, Alison Tiemann's the worst of Honeybadgers. I'm sorry to say this, but she is. I understand her appeal. I understand that she's very, very passionate. She cares a lot about the men's rights movement. She gets things done. I understand that totally. But from the perspective of delivering information, from the perspective of the method that you need in order to, assess anything, to deliver knowledge, to gain knowledge, she's the worst one, because she's the most emotional one. Her tactic, the way that she does things, it's not much different from what a feminist would do, basically just using emotions. Like, if I were to meet her in person and I have this conversation, I'm somebody who, I try to be polite, but if you say something that I'm kind of going like, actually, it's not exactly like that, or I have a even slight problem with, I would say it. I mean, I don't hold back. I just kind of like, actually what you're kind of trying to say is a bit of overgeneralizing a bit. Actually, there's this other thing. Actually, this has been disputed now. That kind of thing. Now, I can just imagine that if I were to meet her and we have this conversation, it's just going to be like when I talk with a feminist. She's going to misrepresent what I'm trying to say all the time. She doesn't listen very very carefully what I'm trying to tell her, and then she just started to sort of go on this trajectory of guessing what my intention is instead of listening what I'm trying to say. She's just guessing, you're psychoanalyzing me, or blah blah blah, So this gets really frustrating when I talk with feminists. This is one of the most frustrating thing when I talk with a feminist about this topic, because it just ended up me constantly having to clarify myself, even though if you just read it carefully the first time, I wouldn't have to do that. But I'm just like, no, I'm not saying that. Look at what I'm actually saying. Listen to what I'm actually saying. Look at what I actually wrote. I'm saying this, nothing more, okay? You're reading too much into what I'm saying, and this is really frustrating. And this is what she does, which is why at the end I'm just saying, like, you're not much different from a feminist from this perspective, and I'm sorry. And okay, so the biggest example being today, we had another debate, okay, where she basically posted a video, e-begging for money. Again, I don't have a problem with that. I don't have a problem with people saying that please support me. I mean, every other YouTuber does it. It's just the way that she does it. She says, if you don't give money to us, ask yourself why, and she said that you must either hate us or maybe you just don't care about men's rights. This is the problem I have. It's not that she says that we really need your support. It's not like the most part of her video where she says that we need your support because we have to keep this going because this is really important. Please give money to us. That's fine. It's the way that she says about how we're just hinting that we're just not good people if we don't give money to her. That was the problem I had with that video. So then I basically laid it out to her. I said that here's the following problems. Well, one is that, I only get about 1,100 a month from my stipend. And the rent is 500. So, I could barely live off of it. And so I don't really have money to become a patron, and also I don't like to play favorites. There's a lot of people on the internet that I would like to support with my money, and if I give money to Honeybadger, then I would feel bad that I don't give money to this other person that I really like, so this was one of the reasons. And then also I just said that it seems like what you're saying, and again I said it seems like because this is how a scientist is supposed to talk when the person did not state it exactly. So I said that it seems like you're trying to say that we should hold men to be more important than women, okay? And then so of course she slapped a comment and she just said, it seems like, how interesting, apparently this is not condescending. I find it condescending, but whatever. This is what she said. So I, again, I gave her the benefit of the doubt and I just told her, look, the reason why I said that is because I wasn't sure if this is actually what you're saying. And I didn't go into it too much, but she could actually be saying, well, we need to focus on men more now because they're the underhelped population. That's fine. But if she's actually saying that, no, we should hold men as more important than women, just in principle, then yes, I would have a problem with that. And then I laid it out to her, why. I told her that, you should help individuals on an individual basis, not, helping people based on gender. And apparently she couldn't understand. And and I'm not surprised because, like I said, she's not well-versed in science, but she couldn't understand the idea that when you help individual on an individual basis, you help the people in that demographic. So it's kind of like if I have red apples and let's say green apples, and 80% of the red apples I say are rotten, and then only 10% of the green apples are rotten. And I go and I just say I wanted to slice away those rotten areas, right? And I could do it in two ways. I could say, well, the red apples are the most rotten bunch, so I'm just only going to scrape at the red apples just because they're red. Or I could say, if there's an apple that's rotten, I'm going to work on it and scrape away those, rotten, I'm not sure if this is the best example, but it's the only one I can think on top of my head now. I'm going to say that if there's an apple that's rotten, I'm going to scrape at it. So which one is the more elegant solution? Well, of course, the second one, because the first one, you're ignoring 10% of those green apples for no reason, and you are also scraping away the red apples, which probably didn't have any problem. Whereas the second one, when you say if the problem is that it's the rottenness, the rotten spots that I'm going to scrape at, when you do that, you basically resolved those 80% of the red apples and the 10% of the green apples. You did this, just by focus on the individual apples, regardless whether the apple is red or green. I don't know if this makes sense, but apparently this cannot get into her head, and this is the problem. Like, most people have a problem understanding like science and statistics and things like that. I mean, when you say something like, when you see something like, on the average, this is higher than that, and you just kind of making that trait, that independent variable, as almost deterministic. This is the problem most people have. So again, it shows that she's not well versed in science, and when I try to just correct her, she gets like all about it. Then that shows that, yeah, I mean, it's not something that I'm impressed with. So no, Allison, I don't have a problem with you asking for money. And also, I don't have a problem with you and Honeybadger just criticizing women. Again, if I had a problem with that, I wouldn't have subscribed to your channel. It's just that there are certain times, there are certain assertions that I think you either exaggerated or you made an inaccurate assertion that I just wanted to point out. That is all. Take it or leave it, really. And here's another inaccurate thing that she said in the new video when she mentioned me, not by name though. She said that, I recently, ran into an argument with a commentator about what I said about men are more compassionate than women. No, you said men are more empathetic than women. Okay, I mean, and then you kind of switch the goalpost to try to talk about compassion, and then you want to define compassion as, sacrificing one's life, basically. And I also clarified that in a comment section about, if you want to define that, that's fine. I don't necessarily have to agree with it. But she kind of just switched the goalposts, which is kind of either disingenuous or just sloppy. Okay, I'm sorry to say. Because they're not the same thing, and I know they're not the same thing, and they are very difficult to define, and it's a long discussion. It's a very complicated topic. One of the things that I find interesting would be, do we need empathy? Like empathy, sympathy. Like, how much do we need of that in order to have the society function effectively? This is a big question because, we could all be like Vulcans, right? I mean, we don't have much emotion, we just have reason. Maybe that would have been enough. Who knows? That's something interesting, and it's another long discussion. Anyways, this has gone on long enough. So